evening, good morning, wherever you are tuning in from. So this is the TDM podcast, and today it's been a while for this podcast to come through. So it's the creative team doing the podcast. We've been having the digital team doing the podcast the whole time, and the reason why we felt like this is important, we're always fighting of the question about creativity and what is creative work. And today we are here to dispel creative work. But the thing that made us do this podcast is a question. Good creative doesn't just happen. And I'm Stevie Amina. I'm the creative director at the Digital Monkeys. And with me here is...
I am Anita.
I'm Denis.
And we are going to do... So Denis, please guys, say what you do.
I'm Denis. I make logos bigger. On a serious note, I'm a head of studio. That's my official title.
Yep.
I'm the content creator.
Yeah, so we were meant to do this podcast with Denis only, but we felt like it's unfair to talk about creativity without a neutral person. So whenever you do research, there's something normally called a test. So Anita is our test subject. She's going to throw the questions at us, and we are going to answer as many of them as possible. Welcome to the TDM podcast. So Anita, shoot.
So, as creatives, how can you tell like creative work is good?
Well, it comes down to two things. Creative work is considered creative if it's original and if it's relevant. It has to be relevant to the client. That means it has to solve the purpose it's for. So if it's an event poster, it has to tell you the relevance coming in terms of the time, the date of the event, the venue, and originality means something you've never seen before.
But also, Denis, to be honest, also sometimes when you know it's creative, you know. You know, have you ever had that? When I see it, I'll know. I'm sure you've had clients saying that.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
But I have struggled with that because it's like I know how to cook, but I can't compare myself to
Gordon Ramsay.
To Gordon, or even the chefs at Ole Sereni. They are pretty good.
Yeah.
So they know their stuff.
But if you can tell good food from bad food, even if you're not a chef, right? Okay.
What do you have to say?
For me, creativity, to be honest, something that is a good creativity varies with your level of skill, where you are. And I say this because a few years back, I thought I was producing really creative work. Then I would go, maybe 10 years later, I'm looking at the work and I'm like, my God, what was this? But to me at that time, the thing was very, very creative. But now, having known that, I would answer it differently right now. Something that is creative is something that is appealing to the eye, first of all. And what is appeal? Appeal is just a general practice of the things that you should do and not do. First of all, when we talk creativity, it's not just limited to what we do as creatives in the advertising industry. So graphic design or, posters, music, TVCs, copywriting. No. People in the medical field can also apply creativity. People in finance can apply creativity.
Hopefully not.
Exactly. They can apply creativity, hopefully in the nice way. Anyone actually in any sector can actually apply creativity. But when it comes to advertising, there are different sets of things that we produce that we are gauged against when it comes to creativity. And there are some general rules and standards that govern such kind of things. So for example, if you're a copywriter, you are governed by the rule of the less words you use to communicate, the better. So you can look creative that way. And the definition in itself is if you produce something or if you bring a thought or an idea in a manner that no one else has ever thought of. So remember, it's not you're bringing something new, you're just expressing it in a manner like no one has ever expressed before. Yeah.
Okay, so when you said creativity has to be unique, sometimes from what I've heard you guys discuss, you look for inspiration. So maybe you might do something because you're inspired by this thing that you saw. How do you differentiate that? And it was not like it did not come originally from you.
Well, it's true. There's nothing new under the sun, but sometimes you can combine two ideas and come up with something new. For example, there's this practice they do in Japan. It's called Shindogu.
Sounds like Luya.
So it's the art of coming up with new things that are not useless, but unuseless. For example, taking tiny umbrellas and putting them on the front of your shoe, so the front of your shoe doesn't get wet. It's such silly things.
Yeah.
So you can see that's quite useful. I don't want my feet to get wet, but it's not really practical.
Yeah.
So the point is, you can take two things and come up with something totally new. Yeah. So when I'm looking at inspiration, I could say to steal it, but that's not what we do. But I can take that idea and infuse it with my own idea. Now that's something original.
Okay. And when you say appealing, like most of the times I might say something very colorful, it looks nice, but when you come to look at it, you'd say it's too much or it's too bright for this particular copy. How do you, from a layman's side, I'm not a creative, so every single color I put up, it is perfect. So when you say appealing, what do you mean?
So appealing to the situation. So have you ever seen these art shows where it's paintings, yeah? So you've gone and you're seeing someone looking at a painting for hours and it's just a dot. And they can say, this artist was undergoing turmoil, and at the time, I can tell they were hungry when they were painting this, all this kind of stuff. Yeah. And it's really expressive. I've never understood it because maybe I'm not exposed that much to paintings and art. But there's something they see that I will not agree with, but someone else will agree with. So that said, is even the word appealing is very, very subjective, and that's what creativity is. Yeah. Creativity is very subjective. If I tell you between yellow and red, which color do you prefer? Half will say yellow, half will say red. Who's right?
Everyone is right.
Everyone is right. So while I would state personally I prefer using less colors or colors in harmony or combining colors that match, someone else might say, for this one, I want the colors to clash because I want the message to bombard, because depending on what it is. So, for example, assume you're doing, let's say, a show on psychedelics.
Yes.
It's called psychedelics?
Yes.
Psychedelics. Psychedelics. Yeah. If you're doing a show on psychedelics, you want to use colors like what you can see behind us because you want to convey that turmoil and whatever is going on in the guys who are using it, and someone who's never used those kind of drugs and stuff can actually resonate and say, oh, I can kind of feel. But when you are doing a corporate video, you don't want to use that. You want to use the colors of the client. So how you use them and how you arrive at your decision has to be based with the aim. Denis earlier had said it's about the communication. What is this thing that you're trying to communicate? And you have to arrive at that, such that if 90% of people can see where you're going, I feel like it's agreeable.
You said something interesting. 90% of people agree. So aesthetics it's a tricky one because it has aspects of people agreeing that this thing actually looks good. For example, most of the world thinks slim women with wide hips are attractive. And the same for men. Men with wide shoulders and, that shape.
That explains a lot.
But if you go to some places in the world, men with really big stomachs are very attractive.
Like that in Sudan.
Yes, exactly. So
or long necks. Yeah. Or women with long necks.
So it's a tricky one. People have to agree. So it's a matter of feedback. Aesthetics is a matter of feedback.
Yeah.
And it's also forgotten my point. Sorry.
You were just talking about how people have to agree a certain way. I talked about the 90% of people agreeing that something looks good.
Yes. Oh, and it's a matter of purpose as well.
Yeah.
Like the psychedelics you said. So you see psychedelics mostly appeal to the young guys who are into microdosing.
Yep.
Using the mushrooms and all that.
Yeah.
So I know they are into that. So if I use my colors to appeal to that part of them, then I know they will like it.
As a community, right?
Yeah. So it has to be purposeful.
Yep.
And it's a matter of feedback.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think I have one last question on that. Do you think colors are also, like in the creative field, are colors psychological?
Definitely. We can discuss color for days. For days. And they mean a lot. They really mean a lot. So I didn't know this, but for example, you can use colors to your advantage, for example, to push your business. So there's a reason why ambulances use red. There's a reason why fast food restaurant will use this number of colors. They'll use yellow, red, etc. And the reason is very simple. Colors that are bright and they make you very uncomfortable, you want to get out of there very quickly. So if it's a fast food restaurant, you'll see them using the reds and the yellows because they want you to get out of there so that someone else can sit. But if you go to restaurants that do fine dining, and you can do this research on your own, you'll find out that, like your dress, the very light blues, because, they want you to feel at home. Even hospitals, like they are calm, they need to relax you. So definitely, colors we can discuss for days.
Yeah. To add about colors, if you look back at ancient Africa, I think they were very creative because they were using the colors they were using, for example, in West Africa. It was just a matter of the resources they had.
Yep.
For example, indigo. Do you know how indigo is made? Indigo actually comes from a plant. So they take this plant, they put it in some, I don't know the solution they use, but it actually comes from a plant. And indigo, it comes from a plant.
I'm joking. Look down here, we'll show indigo in post-production.
There's also terracotta. You know terracotta, the color?
I know terracotta.
It's the color you see on the pots, earthenware.
Yeah.
So, they're just using resources. So, the same case for us, creatives today. Just look around. You don't have to look too far.
People are wearing black. That's what you're saying. But even for color, it reminds me of also the reason why purple is a royal color, because it was a very rare color to get. So it was associated with it was expensive. Anything that is rare becomes expensive. So that's how purple became the color of royalty.
Okay, so then I have a second question for you. What makes a good creative? What can people do to achieve that good work?
Well, you want to go first?
What can people do to become more creative?
Yes, to achieve that good creative work.
Okay, first of all, it's a matter of imagination. Imagination, when you say creativity, these are people we often think of as they have a very vivid imagination, right? So there are things you can do to improve that, surprisingly. Things like like comedy, for example. Why are some people very funny and others, a small number of people are very funny and some of us are not? For example, I'm not funny.
Tell us a joke right now.
It's from a movie. It's a bad joke, terrible joke. Forgive me. From a movie, Pink Panther. So he's standing at the reception, and then someone comes and says, "Does your dog bite?" Pink Panther says, "No." And then the person goes and tries and pets the dog. Immediately the dog attacks. The Pink Panther says, "That's not my dog."
Nice one. Yeah.
So I was saying imagination.
Yeah.
So jokes are one way of doing that. They basically reframe. People who have a vivid imagination are good at reframing problems, like small kids. Yeah. It's also a matter of
Radio silence. I think for me personally, it's observation. I use observation a lot because we are in an industry where we are in advertising and marketing. We are a digital marketing agency and we do a lot of advertising. So we solve a lot of clients' problems. Many people all agencies will say that nowadays, like, oh yeah, we solve problems. But someone who can apply creativity to solve a problem while doing both actually wins the creativity battle. So for example, how I do it is observation, and I keep preaching that to anyone I meet who's trying to do good creative work. Observation of your surrounding, your environment, and observation also in seeking information. So the more information you have in your head, no matter how irrelevant at the time, it's like a database that one day you'll pull out and everyone will wonder, where did you get these things from? So what I always say, the first thing that I advocate is for people to know as much as possible about as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
So when you do that, you can apply different learnings from somewhere to a certain situation. For example, let's say if you are reading a medical journal and you're a creative, you don't know, one day you'll be told to develop a logo for, let's say, a new medical thing. You've gotten a client. And just because you're reading medical journals, you can find yourself knowing what colors are associated with what medicines. I don't know, I've not done that yet. But you find now you are really applying your creativity to a different level. When you go and present this work to the client who's a doctor, and they're very, linear and structured, they feel like, wow, this guy really understands. But it's because 10 years ago you read a medical journal on diabetes. And at that time it was nothing, but it meant a lot. So observation, when you go home, if you're using public transport, observe how people correlate with different things. We are in the business of, we market brands and services for clients. When you're buying things in the supermarket, look at how people are making their decisions of buying. If you are a copywriter, for example, this is really, really important for you because it will help you write the next copy. And guys will just wonder, how do you know all this? Yeah.
So in short, you're telling me for me to enhance my creativity, maybe from books, from observing, from associating with people, is that part of the thing that is measured? They boost it's like a dose of increasing your creativity?
I think it's just a step that works for me. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, I think a simple way of rephrasing what Steve had just said is, if you're a fisherman, the know you more about fish, the more likely you are to catch more fish.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the more you know, the better at design you become. And it's also, for example, I feel like design goes hand in hand with psychology. So, for example, you see a lot of faces in things we design.
Yeah.
Faces are everywhere. On cars. Why do you think some cars are more appealing, beautiful than other cars? People actually say, your gari kona sura mbaya, right?
That's Swahili for that car has a bad face to mean a bad looking car, yeah.
Or I really don't want to mention that car, but for example, some people have a preference of cars with a rounder back.
Yeah.
And others have.
We're talking about cars, right? Yeah.
Yes, we're talking about cars.
I get what you mean, yeah.
And then there are some people who have a preference of cars with a lean back, a more streamlined body.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to say about faces, Dino?
I'm trying to say it's about knowledge. Mm-hmm. Knowledge. You need a lot of knowledge. You need a lot of places to pull from. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you should always, as a designer, you should always be observing, looking around. Yeah. And it goes hand in hand with attitude. You you just need an attitude of curiosity, and you need to be always observing and, pulling from different places. If you don't have the attitude, I don't think you can be very creative. Yeah.
So now, for example, I come to you guys with a very good idea, and I've tried to explain it, I'm even trying to jump, then you just kill that idea. I don't think that's creative.
Yeah, that has happened a lot. I didn't know this was a place where we were going to settle this.
Like you want to jump, you want to hang everywhere just to describe that whole idea. But then when I come to the creatives, you're like, no, that's not possible. I mean, what's your criteria of choosing that?
Before even I answer that, that's one of the tragedies that happens in many ad agencies. So people like us who've worked in agency for a while, we feel like we know it all. We feel like I see this thing one time, I know I'm right. But increasingly that's proving to be the wrongest thing you can ever do, because you'll be stuck with ideas from 1996, bringing, that idea that worked in 96, you keep bringing it over and over again. So if someone says that, I don't think it's the right way, because everyone is creative. Even the accountant guy, no offense to accountants, is creative. Like even the driver of that ambulance, you can hear in the background, is very creative in his own way.
Yeah.
They apply creativity different. And sometimes that great idea, if you listen to that person, assuming you want to market to Gen Zs, and you are not a Gen Z, if you don't listen to them, how will you market? So I think it's a wrong notion that it takes a lot of, retrospect and just looking inward to be able to listen objectively and to see the best from what that person is saying. That's what I would say.
Yeah, to add, I would say it happens a lot. Some ideas get shot down immediately, but I don't think it's a good practice. It should be, especially in brainstorms.
Yeah.
To have a really good brainstorm, you should...
All ideas are valid.
Yes. Try and say, if I give you an idea, try and say yes, and then try and add something to that. And then just keep adding until something good will come out of that. Yeah. Don't just shoot them down immediately.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now, in your years of experience, are there principles or tricks that you guys have developed or you have learned along the way in this creative field? Like, what are your tricks? What are your guiding tricks?
Don't reveal too much.
Like maybe 3 lessons or 2 lessons or just one, and we can understand. Like me as a layman, I'm not in the creative field, but if I wanted to get something from you guys to incorporate in my daily life, what are some of the tricks that you've had?
Well, I don't know if it's a trick. I would call it a practice.
Yeah.
You just try and become a sponge, and I guess I don't know if curiosity is given at birth. I mean, it's something you cultivate. I don't know, but it's important, not just for what we do here, but for wherever you are, whatever you do out there. Curiosity is very important. You need to keep learning. You need to keep evolving. The world is changing very fast every day. So my answer is stay curious.
Okay.
Yeah. For me, it's also similar. Denis calls it practice, I call it system. So I create a system for each and everything that I do. So for example, I would, if I'm doing a logo design, I know that these are the steps I normally take. For example, you tell me to design a logo for a fruit company, for example. I will go to the market, I will look at fruits, I'll do all these things, and I'll get ideas, and I'll come, and that's what will drive. And I'll use the same process once I do that to arrive at that. If, let's say, you're telling me to write copy, I will also do different things. But what I normally do, whenever I get a good idea, because they come any point, even if I don't have a client, I write it down. And sometimes I even save it for the right client. Yeah, so that's what I do. That's my trick.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think my last question will be, what example of good work do you appreciate? Like, if you see this work today, if you had two people present work, like, I don't want you to give an example of something you call good work.
You need an example of something I consider good work.
Yes. Maybe it's something you've done, something you've worked on.
All my work is
All our work
sorry.
at TDM is creative.
But then, do you guys ever ask for opinions from other people?
No, we believe in our We believe in our work.
Okay.
Yeah, feedback is important. It's part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good work if the feedback is not there.
Okay.
But so there's this story I had the other day. It's about Avis. Avis is it's a car
Taxi.
rental
The car rental.
company in the US. It's happened, I believe, in the 60s. I may be getting that wrong. So they were number 2. The number 1 guys were, I believe, Hertz. So Hertz was dominant, like really dominant. All the other players were like really tiny guys. So guess what Avis did? Avis decided, we know we are number 2, so let's just own this.
I remember that one.
Remember that campaign?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a really... And they ran with that campaign for a long time. So the whole campaign was, we are number 2, so we try harder.
Yeah.
And they really put their money where their mouth was.
Yeah.
So they made sure whenever a customer would come, they would make sure they would clean even the ashtrays, make sure the tires are filled. So they really did what they were. They really did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's one example.
Yeah.
Another example is there's another one I just saw this week actually. I don't know if you're familiar with Van Gogh, the painter. He cut off his own ear. He had some mental issues.
Literally.
So they say, yeah, he did. He cut off his own ear.
Mm.
He's a fantastic painter. You should look him up.
I will. Now that he cut his own ear, for what purpose?
So to be a good artist, you have to cut your own ear.
You have to cut something off.
Don't do that at home.
So there was this poster. There's a museum called the Van Gogh Museum. And in this museum, there's a cafe. So what do they serve in cafes? Coffee. So there's this poster of the Van Gogh Museum. Has a coffee cup, but you know that handle of the coffee cup?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They cut it.
Nice.
So it's shaped like an ear.
That's really nice.
So yeah.
I think I'll look it up. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I know we are running out of time. For me, it's just the creativity is the one that I really liked was, the courageous girl standing in front of a bull in Wall Street. For me, that was one of the most creative ideas. I can speak about it for days, but I know we're running out of time. Yeah.
So I think we'll need another episode of Creatives.
Yep.
So that you can tell us those things that you need to explain, like colors, the colors part.
Yeah.
And this other one, we need more explanation on that.
Sure.
Okay. You want to close?
No, it's fine. I think you can close. I'm more of a guest here.
Well, thank you so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this creative podcast and hope you learned something new. Until next time, see you guys.
I've always wanted to say toodles.